Today we will start with our last unit in biology B14, which is about organisms and their environment. This is the first slideshow, and we will talk about ecology, energy flow, and the carbon cycle. Now, what do we mean by an ecosystem? Well, a system is a regular, interacting, independent components forming a unified whole, as together. An ecosystem is an ecological system. It's a community and its physical environment treated together as a functional system. Or, in other words, it's like a unit containing all the organisms interacting together in a given area, such as a lake, or a forest, a desert, etc. And again, pause the video when you need to make your notes, okay? Now, we can look at different ways. We look at the physical environment of a specified area, and we can even look at a microscopic size or even a macroscopic size. Micro means small, macro means big. Now, how is it for the energy flow through living things? Well, we need to know about the different organisms that produce and take up energy. So we have the producers or the autotrophs, and they use energy from sun or even chemicals to produce food. When it is from sunlight, we call it photosynthesis. When it is from chemicals, yes indeed, there are some organisms that can do that. We call it chemosynthesis. Then we have the consumers, the heterotroph. They rely on organisms for their energy and food supply. We have the herbivores, they eat of course plants. We have the carnivores, they eat meat. We have the omnivores, like humans, we eat plants and meat. And we have the detrivore, they eat plant and animal remains. Like earthworms, snails and crabs. And we have the decomposers, they break down organic matter like the fungi or the bacteria. Now let us look at the energy flow. Well, we need to understand a little bit what we mean by food chain and food web tracker energy flow. When we talk about food webs, they are actually made up of several food chains. And here is an example of a food chain. It's like a straight line. We have here the mice, it produces the food. Then we have the first consumer, the locust, eats the maize. Then we have the lizard, it's a secondary consumer which eats the locust. And then we have the snake which eats the lizard. Now, a food web is more like a combination of different food chains, and you can see there are many combinations possible. This is just a small food web, but it can be way more complicated. So by the web we see, for example, that the grasshopper eats the berries and the plantain. And the grasshopper is eaten by the frog. But also the frog eats the butterfly. And the frog again is eaten by the snake. Etc, etc, etc. So it's like we go from the bottom to the top. Now, what do we mean by trophic level? Well, first of all, we have, of course, the producers. They make food from photosynthesis. Then we have the second consumers, the third consumers, fourth consumers. It depends a little bit How big is the food web? Now, the second consumer depends on the first producers. The third consumers depend on the second consumer, and the fourth consumers depend on the third consumer. So they all depend on the trophic level below them. Now let's have a look at the energy pyramid. And what do we mean by the energy pyramid? And you will understand why we call it a pyramid. Okay? The energy pyramid shows actually the amount of energy of matter contained in each trophic level. Normally, when we go from each trophic level up, it's about only 10% of the energy that is passed to the next level. So let's look at this picture. On the bottom, of course, we have the producers. That is where most of the energy is. Okay? Then when we move to the top, and you will see, we go to the herbivore, the carnivore, and the top carnivores, like the hog, yeah, they actually inhabit the least amount of energy. So, when we look at the ecological pyramid, when we move up, the number of organisms decreases and also the available energy decreases. So we get the energy from the sun, and then we move up from first to second to third trophic level. Now, where is that food gone to? Where is it lost? Yeah? Now, let's first look a little bit what is happening. Again, here's a clear example how much food is actually wasted, or I wouldn't say wasted, but lost to the top. We go, for example, from 1 million joules to 10,000 to 1,000 joules to 100 joules to 10 joules. So you can imagine when we move up to the top, there are less organisms. Okay, and the top animals are very vulnerable because they are depending on the secondary consumers, and they again depend on the primary consumers. So if there is a breakage in the link, it means also that the tertiary consumers are the first one that are going to vanish. Now, how is the energy lost? Well, we know that the plants, they get energy from the sun, and heat is lost in respiration. Then they have a certain amount of energy available. Then we have the cricket. The cricket again loses energy in the heat loss, in respiration, etc. When we look at the next picture, we see sun producers, heat loss due to respiration, primary consumers, heat loss, then to third, second, from primary to second, and then to third. Yeah. Okay. What do we mean by the carbon cycle? Because the carbon cycle is very important when we're talking about the energy cycle in food webs. Okay. What do we know? We know that inorganic carbon dioxide, is taken in by photosynthesis in plants. We also know that inorganic carbon is removed by plankton in the sea by photosynthesis. Then we get the organic dead material from plants and animals. This is taken in by the earth and locked. We have the organic carbon from fossils and dead plants and animals, and this is stored for many million years in fossil fuels. And at the end we also have inorganic carbon, which is released by animals and plants by respirations. Okay, so carbon dioxide in by photosynthesis in plants, carbon dioxide in by plankton, also photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is being stored in one way or another, earth unlocked in fossil fuels, and carbon dioxide is released by animals and plants. Yeah, that's where we got the energy loss. And at the end, we get a lot of inorganic carbon that is released by pollution and mainly by combustion of fossil fuels. To give you a better picture of the carbon cycle, yeah, in goes to the photosynthesis by the plants and the plankton. Also the plants and the animals, they lose energy and they respire carbon dioxide by respiration, and some part of the animal and plants is actually stored underground, which becomes fossil and fossil fuels. And a lot of carbon dioxide is released to the atmosphere by human activity. Which brings us to the next unit, and in the next video we will talk about human influences on ecosystems.